Good morning, everybody, from Quarantine Central. This is Thursday's notes and assignment. I see a whole lot of people handed in the compromise assignment already. While I applaud your how hard you're working, you might want to wait till the end of the video and make sure you did it right. And I'll give you one hint. Compromise has to show that you gave up something and that you got something. And if your writing doesn't reflect that, you need to go back and redo it because I will give you 0 points if you don't do it right. So if you're doing the work before I'm posting what the work is, you might get some stuff wrong. So you got to make sure you wait till you're given the instructions. Okay. So I appreciate you guys trying to jump ahead, but please make sure you did it right. We'll give you more instructions at the end of the video. A couple quick announcements. Don't forget yesterday's assignment is due today, technically, because I was not around yesterday. So you got to get Shay's Rebellion. Couple questions done there on Google Forms. It's set up as a quiz. That's the only way for me to attach points to it and give you guys grades on there. I'm learning stuff about, Google Forms and stuff. So it is, even though it's set up as a quiz, please use your notes. Do everything you want to. I want you to support your answers. I want your answers to reflect the fact that you've learned some stuff. So it's technically a quiz, but it's not a quiz at all. It's just a writing assignment. And then use stuff in the notes. And then turn it in before midnight tonight, and then turn in today's before midnight tonight as well. That is due by the end of the day today. So let's talk about everything else here. Let me make sure I got everything else. Okay, good. So when we last left off in the notes, come on now. Shays Rebellion had happened. It scared the bejesus out of all the states. So the states put together not exactly a constitutional convention, but they do meet under the Articles of Confederation. Remember, that is set up to allow the government to function. And they meet with the express desire and commitment to fix the articles. As a matter of fact, they all took off from their home state with the intention of fixing the articles because everybody knew we were having issues. The economy was falling apart, and other countries weren't respecting us. A small group of 1,000 farmers, which, 1,000 farmers is pretty decent, but, any continental army could have stopped them easily. They were unstoppable because the Articles of Confederation didn't allow for an army, etc. So they get together to fix the Articles of Confederation, and things change once they get there. So Section 2 is all about compromise, and that's why you're doing a compromise writing. The Constitution we live under today is one huge set of small compromises and a couple big ones. So that thing is full of, if I give you this, then you give me that. Okay, so let's talk about where they were coming from. Let's talk about the differences. Let's talk about the compromises that occurred. So they get behind closed doors. They come to Philadelphia, exact same place that they've been meeting, where the Declaration of Independence is written. It's the exact same hall where the Constitution is written. They get there with the intent of altering the Articles of Confederation and making them better. But instead, they get there, they kind of all look each other in the eye and they agree. Articles are useless. The Articles of Confederation, you can only fix them if everybody agrees. And there's too many things that nobody agrees on, or not everybody agrees on. So they're kind of useless. They need a more flexible document. They need a more flexible something. So even though there were all these problems, what really killed the Articles of Confederation is the requirement that so many of them agreed to everything in order to change them. And that was so the central government didn't get too powerful. They had to all agree on something. All the states had to agree to something for it to work, because the states were really in charge. So if they didn't agree to it, they simply wouldn't do it. So they needed to all agree. That just doesn't work. You can't even get, 13 people to agree on which restaurant to go to for dinner. I couldn't even get my family to agree to that growing up. So it's just impossible. So they get behind closed doors and they look each other in the eye and they tear up the articles. They say, let's start over. It's useless. We got to fix this. But now they have a problem. They have to go home to their home state with a new document that the states will accept. And remember, right now the states have all of the power. So if you're going to go home with a document that takes power away from the state, whatever state you're in, they're going to say no. So either you have to continue to give the state all the power, that hasn't been working, or you have to give them something in return. You have to say, you're going to give up your power, but let's look at all the things you're going to get out of that. Okay? So they have to start creating a new government. that is of itself a compromise that gives the states something in return for what they're about to take away from the states. And now comes the hard part of trying to figure out how to actually do that. So in the actual delegation, 55 delegates from 12 states took part. Rhode Island didn't send any delegates, and I can't remember why. There was a very specific reason. Either they didn't see the point, or it was harvest season, or something. No, it was in the middle of the summer. So yeah, I don't remember why Rhode Island didn't send any. But we had an interesting mix of people. Some of these people were our founding fathers. Washington and Jefferson were heroes of the Revolution. But some of the delegates at the Constitutional Convention were younger, more fired up, and were veterans of their own state governments. So the states had been running their own government under their own constitutions. And a lot of these guys are going to bring their state ideas with them. And what we're going to see is a lot of stuff pilfered, stolen from the states and put right into the U.S. Constitution. And I think it's better for it because a lot of these stuff they put in there have been tested in the states for about 10 years and they've been working. So let's put them right in the Constitution. The first guy to submit a proposal is Edmund Randolph from Virginia. And not surprisingly, being from one of the largest states in the Union, it's going to favor the larger states in the Union. And there's a really good philosophical reason for that. If we're going to start charging taxes, the states who pay the most taxes should have the most power. The states who have the most votes should have the most power. The states who have the biggest army should have the most power. So the Virginia plan is submitted by Edmund Randolph. Sorry. The main guy who wrote it was James Madison, and that's going to be key because later on when it comes time to create the new Constitution and suggest that everybody sign it, that all the states sign on, he's going to be one of the main advocates of it, and that shows you he's going to get some stuff in there. So it's known as the Virginia Plan. They're going to spend about a month talking about it, and they're going to keep some of the stuff. Okay, so here's what the Virginia Plan wanted. 3 branches of government, that should sound familiar. The judicial branch, the legislative branch, which is the only branch that existed in the Articles of Confederation, and the executive branch. And the executive branch is the one that scared everybody. Remember, executives are a lot like kings. They could possibly have too much power. So it's going to have 3 branches of government. The legislative branch, the one that makes the laws, which we now call Congress, is going to have 2 houses. And the reason why you have that is so that there can be even compromise within the legislative branch. And also you can have 2 different people working on problems, or 2 different groups of people working on problems. So the 3 branches are going to be the legislative branch, and that is Congress. That's been around since the beginning of the Revolutionary War. The executive branch to carry out the laws. That's the president, but that's also all of the people who actually carry out the laws. The police, the FBI, but also like the Health and Human Services Department that keeps track of the coronavirus, or the Housing and Urban Development area that makes sure that that inner cities have affordable housing. All those people are under the executive branch, and then of course the judicial branch. And rest in power, my lady, poor RBG. This is an older picture, but we lost RBG just recently, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. But yeah, this is the Supreme Court. It actually looks very different now because we've had, I think, 3 different justices added. Actually, no, this is relatively recent. The only one that's changed is RBG, because there's Kavanaugh and there's Gorsuch. So they're both on there. So the big deal for them was the executive branch. If the states are gonna submit to some higher power, like a federal government, it can't be too powerful. And the executive branch, or the president specifically, was seen as too powerful. Even though everybody knew that George Washington would be the first president, everybody respected him and knew he wouldn't run away with the power. What about the next guy? Or what about the guy 27 down the line? The 27th president might ruin it for everybody. So if they want this thing to last, they got to be really careful about who they hand that power to and how much power they give them. So a lot of people said a 3-person presidency, or 3-person leadership of the executive branch was a good idea. That way, nobody would get too much power. If you remember anything from last year, that's how Rome did it. Didn't help. Eventually, they went to a civil war anyway, but they stayed stable for a really long time. The concept is if one person gets too powerful, the other 2 people can gang up on him and knock him down a notch. Okay, so the whole point of the 3-person executive branch is so no one person gets too scary. But the problem with that is oftentimes, and this happened in Rome, they disagree and nothing gets done. So what about one person? Because the whole point of the executive branch is you got to react to things. You got to put together an army. You got to lead the army. You got to stop riots. You got to stop Shays' rebellion. You got to do things quickly. If we had had a one person in charge of the executive branch, and we had an executive branch under the Articles, then we could have put Shays' rebellion down quickly. And remember, that's fresh on their minds when they're here. Okay, so eventually they're going to settle on one person as we know it today. That person's known as the president because they preside over the country. The two-house legislature, what they envisioned was an upper and a lower. This is an old concept in the world. The upper branch is always full of richer people. They have less people with a little bit more power per person. The concept of rich and poor has now gone away in America as far as the upper and lower house. But we still have the concept of the upper house, and over here you see the Senate. It is more powerful. If you were in the Senate, you certainly have more power. There's less, this exact same size of a room physically as the House of Representatives, but there's less people in it, so they each get a little bit more workspace. This is the House of Representatives. They're all crammed in there. So each member of the Senate has 1/100th of the power, or 1% of the power, because there's 100 senators. In the House of Representatives, there's 435 of them, so each person gets 1/435th of the power, or roughly a little less than a quarter of the power of anybody in the Senate. It's early. Okay, so this was the concept: is we're going to have two different houses. They're going to have to fight each other to get a bill through. Now we've got to decide how are we going to choose who goes to each one. And a guy named Roger Sherman, you're going to see that name quite a bit, actually said that we shouldn't let people elect the senators. Remember, Americans were uneducated at the time. Very few of them were educated or really knew anything about government, so they shouldn't be picking these people. James Wilson, on the other hand, said, what's the point of a democracy if we don't give the people the power? It's not really a democracy unless people get to vote on these things. So the thing that was going to end the Virginia plan altogether was how many people each state gets. Okay, should Virginia get more people than Rhode Island? Virginia, of course, said yes, but Rhode Island, of course, said no. And this is going to become the huge problem that they face. So in the opposite of the Virginia plan is the New Jersey plan, and all the smaller states that would have lost out in the Virginia plan based on population, because they didn't have a very big population, got together and said, how about this? We're going to put together, William Patterson's plan is going to say, one House of Representatives, and each state gets 2 members, or 1 member. Now, the more astute among you may recognize this is just the Articles of Confederation. The New Jersey plan was just the Articles of Confederation. They fought about it forever and ever, and what they eventually came up with was the Sherman Compromise, also known as the Connecticut Compromise because he's from Connecticut, but really it is the Great Compromise, is we'll do both. And this is the way America is actually set up today. The Senate gets an equal number of people, 2 per state. So Michigan has 2, California has 2, Rhode Island has 2. The smallest state in the country, population-wise, is Alaska. They get 2. It's actually the largest state land-wise, but the smallest state person-wise. They get 2. So California, biggest state, gets 2. Alaska, smallest state, gets 2. Then we're going to have another house called the House of Representatives. That's going to be based on population. In this one, Alaska gets 1 representative because they have very few people. California gets 55 people. So they have way more power. This is known as the Great Compromise. And there's going to be a lot of other compromises, but here's the deal. Okay? This was acceptable because every state in America had some power in the Senate and couldn't be overpowered. Whereas the more powerful states in America could control the House of Representatives. So they weren't really giving up anything. But in order for a law to pass, it would have to make it through both. Which means not only does every state have to be happy with it, or enough states have to be happy with it, the larger states with the most people, the most taxpayers would also have to be happy with it. All right, we'll make another video to explain the assignment.